The scent of lilies always reminded me of Anya. Not the vibrant, freshly cut kind, but the subtle, almost ghostly fragrance of the lily-scented soap she favored. It lingered in our apartment long after she'd left for work, a phantom presence that both comforted and unsettled me. This morning, the scent felt particularly pronounced, almost cloying. I stood in our meticulously clean kitchen, a mug of lukewarm coffee warming my hands, and stared out the window at the cityscape waking up. The gray sky mirrored the unease that had settled in my gut, a feeling I couldn't quite place. Anya was a creature of habit, a master of routine. Every morning was a precise choreography. The alarm at 6:15, the quick shower, the precisely measured scoop of coffee, the carefully chosen outfit laid out the night before. She was a curator of her own life, meticulously crafting an image of effortless elegance and control. And I, her husband, Elias, was a part of that carefully curated image. We were, to the outside world, the picture of a successful, happy couple. Anya, the rising star architect, and I, the supportive husband, the quiet observer of her brilliance. But lately the choreography had felt off. A subtle shift in her demeanor, a flicker in her eyes that disappeared too quickly to decipher. She'd been working late more often, her explanations brief and dismissive. "Important project," she'd say, her tone brooking no further questions. I hadn't pressed. I told myself it was just stress, the pressure of her demanding career. But the gnawing feeling persisted, a cold knot in my stomach that tightened with each passing day. This morning she'd been particularly distant. A hurried peck on the cheek instead of her usual lingering kiss, a distracted goodbye as she rushed out the door. She'd left behind the faintest whiff of her lily-scented soap, a reminder of her presence and her absence. I finished my coffee and placed the mug in the dishwasher, the clatter echoing in the quiet apartment. I should get ready for work, I knew. My own routine awaited me, the predictable rhythm of meetings, emails, and reports. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, that the porcelain mask Anya wore so effortlessly was starting to crack. I walked into our bedroom, drawn to the closet where her clothes hung in perfect order. I ran my hand across the smooth fabric of her dresses, the silk of her blouses, searching for some clue, some tangible evidence of the unease that plagued me. But there was nothing, just the lingering scent of lilies, and the growing certainty that my carefully constructed world was about to crumble. Days turned into weeks, and the unease in my gut festered, growing into a full-blown suspicion. Anya's late nights became more frequent, her excuses more flimsy. The scent of lilies, once a comfort, now felt like a mockery, a constant reminder of her deception. I started noticing small details, things I'd previously overlooked. A new necklace she wore, a delicate gold chain with a pendant I didn't recognize, a faint, unfamiliar cologne clinging to her clothes, a scent that wasn't mine, a stray strand of hair, a shade darker than her own, on the collar of her coat. The seed of doubt, once planted, grew with alarming speed. I found myself replaying every conversation, every interaction, searching for clues I might have missed. Had there been a change in her voice, a subtle shift in her touch? Had the light in her eyes, once so bright when she looked at me, dimmed? The questions gnawed at me, relentless and unforgiving. One evening, as Anya was getting ready for yet another late meeting, I decided to confront her. But the words caught in my throat, choked by a fear I couldn't explain. What if my suspicions were wrong? What if I was just being paranoid, letting my insecurities get the better of me? The thought of shattering the fragile peace we had, of facing the potential wreckage of our marriage, filled me with dread. Instead of confronting her, I did something I'd never done before. I followed her. I watched as she hailed a taxi, her silhouette disappearing into the back seat. I jumped into my own car, the engine roaring to life, and trailed her through the city streets. The taxi eventually stopped in front of a sleek, modern building, a stark contrast to the classic architecture Anya usually favored. I watched as she stepped out, her heels clicking on the pavement, and disappeared into the lobby. The building's directory listed a single name, Dr. Julian Vance, psychiatrist. A psychiatrist? Anya had never mentioned seeing a therapist. The unease in my stomach twisted into a knot of confusion and suspicion. Why would she keep this a secret? What was she hiding? I waited in my car, the minutes stretching into an eternity, until Anya emerged from the building, her face pale and drawn. She hailed another taxi, and I followed her back to our apartment, my mind racing with questions. That night, as Anya slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The scent of lilies filled the air, but it no longer smelled of Anya. It smelled of deceit, of betrayal. The serpent had entered our garden, and I was determined to find out its true nature. The revelation of Anya's secret visits to a psychiatrist sent shockwaves through me. It wasn't just the secrecy itself, but the nature of it. Why would she keep this hidden? Was it something she was ashamed of? Something she couldn't share with me? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more unsettling than the last. I tried to rationalize it. Perhaps she was dealing with stress, the pressure of her demanding job finally taking its toll. Perhaps she needed someone to talk to, someone outside of our relationship. But the excuses felt hollow, insufficient to explain the depth of her deception. The next morning, I decided to tread carefully. I couldn't confront her directly, not yet. I needed to understand the situation, to gather more information before revealing my suspicions. I feigned normalcy, playing the role of the oblivious husband, while inside, I was a storm of conflicting emotions. I made an extra effort to be attentive, to show her the affection I'd always felt, hoping to elicit some kind of response, some hint of what she was going through. I brought her flowers, her favorite tulips, and made her breakfast, a rare occurrence during the week. She seemed appreciative, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. There was a distance in her gaze, a guardedness that hadn't been there before. That evening, I decided to do some research. I searched online for Dr. Julian Vance, the psychiatrist Anya had been seeing. His website described him as a specialist in anxiety and relationship issues. Relationship issues? The words echoed in my mind, confirming my worst fears. Was Anya seeing him because of problems in our marriage? Was she confiding in him about things she couldn't tell me? I felt a surge of anger, a burning resentment towards this man, this stranger who had become privy to the most intimate details of our lives. I imagined Anya sitting in his office, pouring out her heart, while I, her husband, remained in the dark. The thought was unbearable. I knew I couldn't confront Anya directly, not without knowing more. So I decided to take a different approach. I made an appointment with Dr. Vance myself. I fabricated a story about struggling with stress and anxiety, hoping to gain some insight into Anya's situation without revealing my true identity. The appointment was scheduled for the following week. The wait felt like an eternity. Every moment I spent with Anya felt like a performance, a charade. I watched her, studied her, searching for any sign of guilt, any flicker of remorse. But she remained composed, her porcelain mask firmly in place. The mirror had cracked, but the pieces were still clinging together, threatening to shatter completely with the slightest touch. The day of my appointment with Dr. Vance arrived, each tick of the clock a hammer blow against my strained nerves. I found myself pacing the pristine waiting room, the sterile environment amplifying my anxiety. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic and something floral, perhaps lilies. The irony wasn't lost on me. Every creak of the door, every muffled voice from behind the closed office, sent a jolt of anticipation through me. Was that Anya's voice? Was she here, confiding in this man, this stranger, about our marriage, about me? The thought made my blood run cold. I picked up a magazine from the coffee table, the glossy pages filled with smiling faces and idyllic scenes, a stark contrast to the turmoil within me. I couldn't focus on the words, the images blurring before my eyes. All I could see was Anya, her face etched with worry, her voice whispering secrets to Dr. Vance. Time seemed to crawl by. Each minute felt like an hour, each hour an eternity. I was trapped in a purgatory of anticipation, the uncertainty gnawing at my soul. What would I say to Dr. Vance? How would I gain his trust without revealing my true identity? What if he recognized me, saw through my facade? The door to the office finally opened, and a young woman emerged, her eyes red and swollen. She hurried past me, her footsteps echoing in the silent waiting room. I watched her go, wondering about her story, her pain. Was she here because of a betrayal, a broken heart? Was she seeking solace in the words of this man, this Dr. Vance, who held the secrets of so many troubled souls? My name was finally called, and I rose from my seat, my legs feeling heavy and unsteady. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm within me, and stepped into the office, the door closing softly behind me. The room was dimly lit, the only source of light a desk lamp casting a warm glow on the leather-bound books lining the shelves. Dr. Vance sat behind his desk, his face obscured by the shadows. He gestured towards the chair opposite him, and I sat down, my heart pounding in my chest. The game had begun. Dr. Vance's office was a sanctuary of hushed tones and muted colors, designed to soothe the troubled mind. But for me, it felt like a battleground. I sat opposite him, the leather of the chair cold against my skin, and felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were observing the scene from outside my own body. Dr. Vance was a study in contrasts. His sharp, intelligent eyes belied the gentle cadence of his voice. He exuded an air of calm authority, a reassuring presence that I imagined would put his patients at ease. But I was not his patient, not in the true sense of the word. I was an imposter, a spy in the enemy camp. He began with the usual questions, the standard opening gambit of any therapy session. "Tell me, Elias," he said, his voice a soothing balm, "what brings you here today?" I launched into the carefully constructed narrative I had prepared, a tale of work-related stress, anxiety, and insomnia. I spoke of the pressure to succeed, the fear of failure, the constant need to prove myself. I wove a tapestry of half-truths and outright lies, careful to avoid any mention of Anya, of my suspicions, of the real reason for my visit. Dr. Vance listened attentively, his expression neutral, his eyes betraying no hint of judgment or suspicion. He occasionally interjected with a question, a gentle probe to encourage me to elaborate, to delve deeper into my fabricated anxieties. I responded with practiced ease, drawing on my own experiences, my own vulnerabilities, to lend authenticity to my performance. As the session progressed, I found myself caught in a strange duality. On one hand, I was acutely aware of my deception, of the charade I was playing. On the other hand, I felt a genuine sense of relief, a catharsis in sharing my anxieties, even if they were cloaked in a fabricated narrative. Dr. Vance's presence was strangely comforting, his calm demeanor and insightful questions creating a safe space for me to explore my own inner turmoil. I found myself revealing more than I had intended, straying from my carefully rehearsed script. I spoke of my fears, my insecurities, the doubts that had plagued me long before Anya's secret visits to this very office. Dr. Vance listened patiently, his silence an invitation to delve deeper, to confront the demons that lurked within me. As the session drew to a close, I felt a strange sense of connection with this man, this stranger who had become privy to my innermost thoughts and fears. I realized that I had not only come here to gather information about Anya, but also to seek solace for myself, to find a temporary refuge from the storm raging within me. Leaving Dr. Vance's office, I felt a mix of relief and trepidation. I had gained a valuable foothold in the enemy camp, but the battle was far from over. The information I had gleaned was just the beginning, a single piece in a complex puzzle. I needed to be patient, to continue my charade, to gather more pieces before I could confront Anya with the truth. The game was still on, and the stakes were higher than ever. My sessions with Dr. Vance became a regular fixture in my life, a strange counterpoint to the crumbling facade of my marriage. Each week, I would don my mask of normalcy, playing the role of the concerned husband while secretly gathering information, piecing together the puzzle of Anya's betrayal. Dr. Vance, bound by confidentiality, never revealed specifics about Anya's sessions. But through carefully crafted questions and subtle observations, I began to glean valuable insights. He spoke in generalities, of course, but his words painted a picture of a woman struggling with deep-seated insecurities, a woman yearning for validation and affection. He spoke of her fear of failure, her need to control every aspect of her life, her difficulty in forming genuine connections. The picture that emerged was both familiar and unsettling. It was the Anya I knew, the Anya I loved, but with a layer of vulnerability and fragility I had never seen before. It made me question everything I thought I knew about her, about us. Was this the real Anya, the woman hiding behind the porcelain mask? Or was this just another facade, a carefully constructed persona she presented to her therapist? As the weeks passed, I became more adept at navigating the treacherous waters of my double life. I learned to read between the lines of Dr. Vance's pronouncements, to decipher the subtle clues hidden in his words. I discovered that Anya had been seeing him for several months, that her visits had become more frequent in recent weeks, that she had expressed dissatisfaction with her marriage with me. The knowledge was a poison, slowly seeping into my veins, corroding my love, my trust, my very sense of self. But I couldn't stop. I was driven by a need to know, to understand, to expose the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I began to observe Anya more closely, searching for signs of the woman Dr. Vance had described. I noticed the flicker of doubt in her eyes, the tightness of her smile, the way she would withdraw into herself after a particularly stressful day. I saw the cracks in her armor, the chinks in her carefully constructed facade. And then, one evening, I stumbled upon a clue that shattered the fragile illusion of our marriage. I was going through Anya's emails, a violation of privacy I justified as a necessary measure, when I found a message from Dr. Vance. It was a simple appointment reminder, but the subject line caught my eye: session with Anya and Julian. Julian, not Dr. Vance. Julian. The casual familiarity of the name sent a shiver down my spine. It was a confirmation of my worst fears, a revelation that cut deeper than any of Dr. Vance's carefully worded pronouncements. Anya was not just seeing Dr. Vance for therapy. She was seeing Julian, and their relationship was clearly more than professional. The web was tightening, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. I was closing in on the truth, but the closer I got, the more terrifying it became. The discovery of the email, the casual intimacy of Anya and Julian, ignited a fury within me I had never known. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical infidelity. It was a violation of trust, a desecration of our marriage, a mockery of everything we had built together. I spent the rest of the night in a haze of anger and despair, the email replaying in my mind like a broken record. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think straight. All I could feel was the burning pain of betrayal, the crushing weight of deception. The next morning, I went through the motions of my daily routine, the familiar rituals a hollow mockery of normalcy. I showered, dressed, and ate breakfast, all the while feeling like a stranger in my own life. The scent of lilies, once a reminder of Anya, now filled me with revulsion. I went to work, but I couldn't focus on my tasks. My mind was consumed by thoughts of Anya and Julian, their secret rendezvous, their shared intimacy. I imagined them together, laughing, talking, touching. The images were like daggers to my heart, each one a reminder of my own inadequacy, my own failure. I left work early, unable to bear the pretense any longer. I drove home, the city streets blurring into a kaleidoscope of frustration and despair. I needed to confront Anya, to demand answers, to unleash the fury that was consuming me. But when I arrived at our apartment, it was empty. Anya wasn't home. I searched for a note, a message, anything to explain her absence, but there was nothing. Just the lingering scent of lilies and the crushing silence of her absence. I went into our bedroom, drawn to her side of the bed, the sheets still rumpled from the night before. I picked up her pillow, burying my face in the soft fabric, inhaling her scent, trying to recapture a memory of the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew. But all I could smell was the faintest trace of another cologne, a masculine scent that wasn't mine. It was a confirmation of my worst fears, a tangible reminder of her betrayal. I threw the pillow across the room, the force of my anger surprising even myself. I started pacing the room, my frustration growing with each step. I needed to do something, to take action, to release the pent-up rage that was threatening to consume me. I went to Anya's desk, her workspace a testament to her meticulous nature. Everything was in its place, every pen, every notebook, every file neatly organized. I started rummaging through her drawers, searching for something, anything, that might shed light on her affair. And then I found it, a small, leather-bound notebook, tucked away in the back of a drawer. I opened it, my heart pounding with anticipation. The pages were filled with Anya's elegant handwriting, a mix of personal reflections and work-related notes. I flipped through the pages, scanning the entries, searching for something, anything, that might reveal the truth about her relationship with Julian. And then I saw it, a single name, scrawled in the margin of a page, circled in red ink, Julian. The sight of that name, so casually inscribed, so intimately connected to Anya's thoughts, sent a wave of nausea through me. It was a confirmation of my worst fears, a tangible reminder of her betrayal. I closed the notebook, my hands trembling with rage. I needed to get out of there, to escape the suffocating confines of our apartment, to find some release for the fury that was consuming me. I grabbed my keys and stormed out of the apartment, the door slamming shut behind me. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there, not with the ghost of Anya and Julian haunting every corner of our once shared space. The city at night was a different beast than the one I knew by day. The familiar landmarks, the bustling streets, the towering buildings, all took on a new, sinister aspect under the cloak of darkness. The shadows seemed deeper, the lights harsher, the sounds more ominous. It was a world of hidden desires, secret rendezvous, and unspoken truths. I drove aimlessly, the city lights a blur through the rain-streaked windshield. The rhythmic swish of the wipers was the only sound that penetrated the cocoon of my despair. I felt adrift, lost in a sea of emotions, the familiar landmarks offering no comfort, no sense of direction. I ended up at a bar I had never been to before, a dimly lit establishment tucked away on a side street. The neon sign above the entrance flickered erratically, casting an eerie glow on the rain-slicked pavement. I hesitated for a moment, then pushed open the door, the sound of raucous laughter and clinking glasses washing over me. The bar was crowded, a mix of locals and tourists, young and old, all seeking solace or escape in the anonymity of the crowd. I found an empty stool at the bar and ordered a whiskey, the strong liquor burning its way down my throat, a temporary distraction from the pain in my heart. I sat there for hours, nursing my drink, watching the people around me, their faces a mask of fleeting emotions. I saw laughter, sadness, anger, desire, all the shades of human experience playing out in this dimly lit space. I felt a strange sense of kinship with these strangers, a shared vulnerability in the face of life's uncertainties. As the night wore on, the bar gradually emptied, the noise subsiding to a low hum. I was left alone with my thoughts, the silence amplifying the pain in my heart. I looked at my reflection in the mirror behind the bar, the image distorted by the dim lighting and the swirling smoke. I saw a stranger staring back at me, a man with hollow eyes and a haunted expression. I closed my eyes, trying to shut out the image, trying to escape the reality of my situation. But the memories came flooding back, the happy moments, the shared dreams, the promises made and broken. I saw Anya's face, her smile, her eyes, the way she used to look at me with love, with admiration, with trust. And then I saw Julian's face, his smug smile, his confident gaze, the way he looked at Anya, with desire, with possession, with a sense of entitlement. The image filled me with rage, a primal urge to lash out, to destroy, to inflict pain. I slammed my fist on the bar, the sound echoing through the empty space. The bartender looked up, startled, but I ignored him. I needed to get out of there, to escape the suffocating memories, to find some release for the fury that was consuming me. I stumbled out of the bar, the cool night air a welcome relief from the stifling atmosphere inside. I walked aimlessly, the city streets deserted now, the only sound the echo of my own footsteps. I felt lost, adrift in a sea of despair, the city lights offering no guidance, no hope. And then I saw it, a small, unassuming building, tucked away on a side street. The sign above the entrance read, Dr. Julian Vance, Psychiatrist. I stared at the sign, the letters blurring through my tear-filled eyes. It was a beacon in the darkness, a symbol of my betrayal, a reminder of the man who had stolen my wife, my life, my happiness. I felt a surge of anger, a primal urge to lash out, to destroy, to inflict pain. I walked towards the building, my footsteps echoing in the silent street. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I couldn't ignore the pull, the magnetic force that drew me towards this place, this symbol of my pain. The rain had stopped, leaving a glistening sheen on the pavement that reflected the city lights like a shattered mirror. I stood across the street from Julian's office, the building dark and silent, a tomb-like presence in the sleeping city. A wave of exhaustion washed over me, the adrenaline that had fueled my anger dissipating, leaving a hollow ache in its wake. I questioned the impulse that had brought me here. What was I hoping to achieve? To confront Julian? To seek revenge? The thought of facing him, of seeing the man who had betrayed me, filled me with a mixture of dread and revulsion. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to be here, that there was something I needed to see, to understand. I crossed the street and approached the building, my footsteps echoing in the stillness of the night. I tried the door, but it was locked. I peered through the window, but the darkness inside was impenetrable. I circled the building, searching for another way in, a hidden entrance, a back door. But there was nothing. The building was a fortress, its secrets well guarded. I sat down on the steps, the cold stone seeping through my clothes, and lit a cigarette, the flame a tiny beacon in the darkness. I inhaled deeply, the nicotine a temporary solace, a fleeting escape from the turmoil within me. As I sat there, the doubts began to creep in. Was I wrong about Anya and Julian? Was I misinterpreting their relationship? Perhaps they were just friends, colleagues who shared a common interest in psychology. Perhaps Anya was confiding in him about her problems, seeking his professional advice. Nothing more. The thought offered a glimmer of hope, a lifeline in the sea of despair. But it was quickly extinguished by the memory of the email, the casual intimacy of Anya and Julian, the undeniable evidence of their connection. I cursed myself for my weakness, for my inability to confront Anya, to demand answers, to put an end to the uncertainty that was tearing me apart. I had allowed myself to be manipulated, to be deceived, to be played for a fool. I ground out my cigarette on the step, the ember a tiny spark of defiance in the darkness. I wouldn't let them win, I wouldn't let them destroy me. I would find out the truth no matter the cost. I rose to my feet, my resolve renewed. I would confront Anya, I would demand answers, I would expose their lies. And then I would decide what to do next. But first I needed to get some sleep. I needed to clear my head, to gather my strength, to prepare for the battle ahead. I walked away from the building, the city lights guiding my way, the promise of dawn a faint glimmer of hope on the horizon. The following morning, I woke with a sense of grim determination. The exhaustion was still there, a heavy weight on my shoulders, but it was overshadowed by a steely resolve. I knew what I had to do. I waited for Anya to leave for work, the sound of the closing door echoing through the empty apartment like a gunshot. Then, I went to her desk and retrieved the notebook. I opened it to the page where she had written Julian's name, the red circle around it mocking me like a bloodstain. I took a deep breath and dialed Julian's office number. His receptionist answered, her voice crisp and professional. Dr. Vance's office? How may I help you? I need to speak to Dr. Vance, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'm afraid Dr. Vance is with a patient at the moment. Would you like to leave a message? No, I said. I need to speak to him now. It's urgent. There was a pause. Then the receptionist said, May I ask who's calling? Tell him it's Elias, I said, and hung up. I waited, my heart pounding in my chest. The phone rang a few minutes later. I picked it up, my hand trembling slightly. Elias. Julian's voice was smooth and calm, with a hint of surprise. Julian, I said, my voice flat. We need to talk. I'm afraid I'm not sure I understand, Julian said. Is this about Anya? Yes, I said. It's about Anya. I'm afraid I can't discuss my patients with you, Julian said. It would be a breach of confidentiality. Confidentiality? I laughed. A harsh, bitter sound. You're sleeping with my wife? And you're worried about confidentiality? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Julian said, I think we need to talk in person. I agree, I said. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I hung up the phone and grabbed my coat. As I left the apartment, I took one last look around, the familiar space now tainted with the poison of betrayal. I closed the door behind me, knowing that I would never return. The drive to Julian's office was a blur. I barely registered the traffic, the buildings, the people. All I could see was Anya's face, her betrayal etched into every line, every expression. I arrived at Julian's office and stormed past the receptionist, ignoring her protests. I burst into his office, the door slamming against the wall. Julian was sitting behind his desk, his expression a mixture of surprise and annoyance. He rose to his feet, his eyes narrowing. Elias, he said, his voice cautious. What's the meaning of this? You know damn well what this is about, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You're sleeping with my wife. Julian's expression hardened. I'm not going to deny it, he said. But I'm not going to apologize either. Apologize? I laughed, the sound raw and ragged. You think an apology is going to fix this? You've destroyed my life, you bastard. I didn't destroy your life, Julian said, his voice cold. You did that yourself. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I demanded. It means that your marriage was already over before I came along, Julian said. Anya was unhappy, Elias. She was lonely. She was neglected. She was looking for something more. And she found it with me. You're lying, I said, my voice a whisper. Am I? Julian said, his eyes boring into mine. Look inside yourself, Elias. You know it's true. I stared at him, my mind reeling. His words were like poison, seeping into my soul, eroding the last vestiges of my self-respect. Was he right? Was my marriage already over before Anya met him? Had I been so blind, so self-absorbed, that I hadn't seen the signs? I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, the room spinning. I stumbled back, my hand grasping the edge of the desk for support. Julian watched me, his expression impassive. I'm sorry, Elias, he said, his voice devoid of emotion. But it's the truth. I looked at him, my vision blurring, my body trembling. I wanted to hit him, to hurt him, to make him pay for what he had done. But I didn't have the strength. I was defeated, broken, empty. I turned and stumbled out of the office, the receptionist's concerned gaze following me. I walked out into the street, the city lights a dizzying blur. I didn't know where I was going, what I was going to do. All I knew was that my life was over. I wandered the streets of Kiev like a ghost, the familiar sights and sounds now alien and meaningless. The bustling crowds, the honking cars, the cheerful chatter of passers-by, it all washed over me. A meaningless cacophony in the face of my shattered world. Julian's words echoed in my mind. A cruel mantra of betrayal and self-recrimination. Your marriage was already over. Anya was unhappy. She found it with me. Each phrase was a dagger to my heart, twisting the knife of my pain. Had I been so blind? Had I failed to see the signs of Anya's unhappiness, her growing discontent? I searched my memories, replaying every conversation, every interaction, every shared moment, looking for clues I might have missed. I remembered the long hours I spent at work, the late nights, the weekends sacrificed at the altar of my career. I remembered the missed dinners, the forgotten anniversaries, the neglected gestures of affection. I remembered the times I had dismissed Anya's concerns, her subtle pleas for attention, her growing frustration with my emotional distance. The truth was a bitter pill to swallow. I had been so focused on building my career, on achieving success, that I had neglected the most important thing in my life. My marriage, my wife, my Anya. I had taken her for granted, assuming that her love was a given, a constant that would always be there, regardless of my neglect. I had failed to see the cracks in our foundation, the slow erosion of our connection, the growing chasm between us. And now it was too late. Anya had found solace in the arms of another man, a man who had offered her the attention, the affection, the validation that I had denied her. Julian's words, though cruel, were true. I had destroyed my own marriage, my own happiness. I wandered aimlessly, my feet carrying me to the banks of the Dnipro River. The water flowed swiftly, its surface reflecting the gray sky, a mirror of my own turbulent emotions. I stared at the current, mesmerized by its relentless movement, its indifference to my pain. I felt a strange urge to jump, to surrender to the oblivion of the water, to escape the torment of my thoughts. But something held me back, a faint flicker of hope, a stubborn refusal to give up. I turned away from the river and walked back towards the city center, my steps heavy and uncertain. I didn't know where I was going, what I was going to do, but I knew I couldn't stay here. In this city that held so many memories, so much pain. I needed to get away, to escape the ghosts of my past, to find a place where I could heal, where I could rebuild my life. But first, I needed to do one last thing. I needed to confront Anya, to tell her how I felt, to say goodbye. The apartment felt like a tomb. Every object, every piece of furniture, every photograph, was a reminder of Anya and the life we had shared. The scent of lilies, once a comforting presence, now felt suffocating, a mockery of the love that had withered and died. I packed a small bag, throwing in a few essentials. Clothes, toiletries, my passport. I moved through the apartment like an automaton, my actions devoid of emotion, my mind numb with grief. I left the notebook on Anya's desk, open to the page with Julian's name circled in red. It was a final message, a silent accusation, a testament to her betrayal. I hesitated at the door, my hand hovering over the handle. I wanted to leave a note, to explain, to apologize, to say goodbye. But the words wouldn't come. What was there to say? How could I express the depth of my pain, the magnitude of my loss, in a few scribbled lines? I closed the door behind me, the sound echoing through the empty apartment like a death knell. I walked away without looking back, my heart heavy with unshed tears. I found Anya at her office, a sleek, modern building in the heart of the city. I walked past the receptionist, ignoring her surprised expression, and went straight to Anya's office. She was sitting at her desk, her head bent over a blueprint, her brow furrowed in concentration. She looked up as I entered, her eyes widening in surprise. "Elias?" she said, her voice hesitant. "What are you doing here?" I stood there, looking at her, the woman I had loved, the woman who had betrayed me. The words I had rehearsed, the accusations, the recriminations, all died in my throat. "I know," I said, my voice a hollow whisper. Anya's face paled. "Know what?" she said, her voice barely audible. "About you and Julian," I said. Anya's eyes filled with tears. "Elias, she began, but her voice trailed off. I shook my head. "Don't," I said. "Just don't." I turned and walked away, leaving Anya standing there, her face etched with guilt and remorse. I didn't need to hear her explanations, her apologies, her excuses. The truth was written in her eyes, in the trembling of her lips, in the way she avoided my gaze. I walked out of the building and into the bustling city, the noise and the crowds a welcome distraction from the pain in my heart. I didn't know where I was going, what I was going to do, but I knew one thing. I was leaving Kiev, leaving Anya, leaving the ghosts of my past behind. I walked towards the train station, my steps growing lighter with each passing block. The city receded behind me, a blur of buildings and streets, a fading memory of a life that was no more. I boarded the train, finding an empty seat by the window. As the train pulled out of the station, I looked back at the city, a final farewell to the place where I had loved and lost, where I had found and lost myself. The train rattled through the Ukrainian countryside, a blur of fields and villages passing by my window. Each mile that separated me from Kiev felt like a weight lifting from my shoulders, a loosening of the chains that had bound me to my past. I had no destination in mind, no concrete plan. I simply needed to escape, to put as much distance as possible between myself and the wreckage of my life. The rhythmic sway of the train, the monotonous clickety-clack of the wheels, had a hypnotic effect, lulling me into a state of detached introspection. For the first time since the discovery of Anya's betrayal, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my emotions. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, the grief. It all came crashing down on me, a tidal wave of pain that threatened to drown me. I wept silently, my tears tracing paths through the grime on the train window. I didn't try to stop them, didn't try to suppress the emotions that had been bottled up for so long. I needed to release them, to purge myself of the poison that had been eating away at my soul. As the tears subsided, a strange sense of calm descended upon me. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was a beginning, a glimmer of light in the darkness. I realized that leaving Kiev was not an act of running away, but an act of self-preservation. I needed to distance myself from the source of my pain in order to heal, to rebuild, to find myself again. The journey became a metaphor for my own internal process. Each passing town, each unfamiliar landscape, represented a step forward, a shedding of the past, a movement towards an unknown future. I didn't know what that future held, but I was no longer afraid to face it. I spent the long hours on the train reading, writing, and simply watching the world go by. I struck up conversations with fellow passengers, sharing stories and experiences, finding solace in the shared humanity of strangers. I began to see the world with new eyes, appreciating the beauty and complexity of life beyond the confines of my own narrow perspective. The journey was not without its challenges. There were moments of doubt, moments of despair, moments when the pain of the past threatened to overwhelm me. But I persevered, drawing strength from the knowledge that I was not alone, that there were others who had experienced similar pain, who had found a way to heal, to move on. As the train approached the border, a sense of anticipation mingled with trepidation. I was leaving behind everything I had ever known, stepping into the unknown with nothing but a backpack and a broken heart. But I was also leaving behind the pain, the betrayal, the ghosts of my past. I was embarking on a new journey, a journey of self-discovery, a journey towards a new life. The border crossing was a blur of officialdom and suspicion. My Ukrainian passport, once a symbol of belonging, now felt like a mark of Cain, a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. The border guard's scrutiny, the stamping of documents, the questioning glances, it all felt like a judgment, a condemnation of my failure. But I had made my decision. There was no turning back. I stepped across the invisible line that separated Ukraine from the rest of Europe, and with that step, I felt a sense of liberation, a shedding of the past, a release from the shackles of my former life. I had chosen to travel west, towards the heart of Europe, drawn by a vague sense of possibility, a yearning for a fresh start. I had no specific destination in mind, no concrete plans. I simply wanted to explore, to experience new cultures, to immerse myself in the unfamiliar. I traveled by train, bus, and on foot, my journey dictated by whim and circumstance. I slept in hostels, goose houses, and sometimes under the stars, my backpack my only constant companion. I met people from all walks of life, each encounter a lesson in human resilience and adaptability. I learned to navigate the complexities of foreign languages, the nuances of cultural differences, the challenges of being a stranger in a strange land. I discovered a hidden strength within myself, a resourcefulness I never knew I possessed. I found solace in the anonymity of travel, the freedom to be whoever I wanted to be, without the weight of expectations, without the burden of my past. I shed my old identity, the identity of the betrayed husband, the failed partner, and embraced the uncertainty of the present moment. I explored ancient cities, marveling at the architectural wonders of centuries past. I hiked through breathtaking landscapes, feeling the power of nature's indifference to human suffering. I immersed myself in local cultures, learning new customs, tasting new foods, expanding my horizons beyond the confines of my previous existence. With each passing day, the pain of the past began to recede, replaced by a growing sense of wonder and curiosity. I rediscovered the joy of learning, the thrill of adventure, the simple pleasure of being alive. I wasn't trying to forget Anya, to erase her from my memory, but I was learning to live with the pain, to accept it as a part of my story, a chapter that had shaped me, but did not define me. I knew that the journey wouldn't erase the scars of the past, but it was helping me to heal, to grow, to find a new path forward. I was no longer the man who had walked out of his apartment in Kiev, broken and defeated. I was a traveler, an explorer, a seeker, a man on a journey of self-discovery, a man open to the possibilities of the unknown. Months turned into a year, and the seasons changed with the rhythm of my travels. I had traversed Europe, from the icy fjords of Norway to the sun-drenched beaches of Greece, each place leaving its own unique imprint on my soul. The pain of Anya's betrayal had dulled, replaced by a quiet acceptance, a recognition that our paths had diverged, that our story had reached its end. I had forgiven her not for her sake, but for my own. Forgiveness wasn't about condoning her actions, but about releasing myself from the bitterness and resentment that had been poisoning my spirit. I had learned to live with the memories, the good and the bad, the joys and the sorrows. They were a part of me, a part of my story, a testament to the capacity of the human heart to love and to lose, to hurt and to heal. One evening, as I sat in a small cafe in a quaint Italian village, sipping a cappuccino and watching the world go by, I noticed a familiar handwriting on an envelope addressed to me. My heart skipped a beat. It was Anya's writing. I opened the letter with trembling hands, my mind racing with anticipation and apprehension. The letter was short, but its words resonated with a depth of emotion that transcended the distance that separated us. Anya wrote of her regret, her remorse, her realization of the pain she had caused me. She wrote of her own journey of self-discovery, her struggle to come to terms with her actions, her desire to make amends. She didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't expect me to return to her. She simply wanted to let me know that she understood the consequences of her choices, that she had learned from her mistakes, that she wished me well. I read the letter several times, each word a balm to my wounded heart. Anya's words weren't an attempt to justify her actions, but a sincere expression of regret, a recognition of the damage she had caused. I didn't reply to the letter. There was nothing more to say. Our story was over, but the ending wasn't one of bitterness and resentment, but of acceptance and understanding. I finished my cappuccino, the warm liquid a comfort on a cool evening. I looked out at the village square, the laughter of children playing, the chatter of locals enjoying their evening passeggiata, the simple pleasures of life unfolding before me. I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes. I had traveled far, both geographically and emotionally. I had faced my demons, confronted my pain, and emerged from the darkness stronger and wiser. I was no longer the man who had left Kiev broken and defeated. I was a traveler, an explorer, a seeker, a man who had found his way back to himself. The journey had been long and arduous, but it had led me to a place of peace, a place of acceptance, a place where I could finally let go of the past and embrace the unknown future. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the village, painting the sky in a symphony of colors. I watched the spectacle, feeling a sense of gratitude for the journey, for the pain, for the lessons learned, for the life that lay ahead.